All right. Good morning, students. Once again, my name is Benedict Sarti. I am your instructor here at Voma Energy. Uh, the objectives of our learning of this course is to define the basic difference between direct current, which is DC, and alternating current, which is AC. We're also going to identify and describe basic functions of different components of PV systems. I'm going to introduce you to the features and applications of the following PV systems configurations. That's PV, which is PV direct, standalone, redirect, multi-mode. I have diagrams that is as I have diagram I'm going to show you in order for you to understand the components in an active interactive way. We have PowerPoints and active interactions and powerful. So diagram systems to understand components, auto interactions, and power flow. In this lesson, the different types of PV systems and the way they are configured will be introduced. Well, depending on the whether a PV system is being used to power home, grid, connected home, or a remote telecommunication site. Certain systems configurations may be better suited than another. The different system types include PV direct, standalone, gray direct and multi-mode, also known as gray tie, with battery banks. Though this course focus on gray direct systems without battery, it is important to be able to accurately describe the purpose of systems components and differentiate between types of PV systems, including those with battery. So when we talk about gray direct, we're talking about a PV system wherein you have a solar panel or a PV, it's called PV, learn the terminologies. Liberia or most part of the world is known as solar panel. You have it over your house and you have all the various components needed, but you don't have a battery bank. So what it does is that when the sun shines, your PV system supplies electricity to your home appliances, and you have the electric grid, which is like LEC in Africa or NAPA in Nigeria. The electric grids actually is on a standby as the PV system is supplying electricity to your house. As the sun ray goes down or days where there is no sun, your home gets supplied by the PV, by the electric grid, which is LEC or NAPA. So it also is a system in which you can sell excess current back to the grid. So if you have excess current after all your components, your devices have efficient electricity, you can actually electric power, you can actually sell back your grill or your grill tool, the grill or the utility company. But that system is used in developed world. In Africa, most part of Africa, we don't have a consistent current from the grid. So we in later course, we will be talking about standalone. Comes in with a battery bank to store your current after the sun goes down. The learning objective for this lesson, I define the difference between DC and AC electricity. The word DC stands for direct current and AC is the alternating current. We're going to identify and describe the individual components that make up different PV systems. Configuration. Complete basic system diagram shows interactions among components and directions of energy flow. That is what we are going to be discussing. So you stay tuned with me. All right. So we have the component and system configurations, types of electrical current. So there are two types of electrical current known in our day-to-day. Either you have a DC current or you have an AC current. DC is direct current. So the solar panel or the PV array, PV cells, receive the ray from the sun, transform that ray into a DC current, which is a direct current. So that's what PV system or solar panel provides, DC, DC current. Then we have AC, which is the alternating current. If you look at the chart right here, in this chart, direct current moves in one direction, and the AC current moves zigzag, move back and forth. Most of the appliances used in our homes, like refrigerators, air conditions, televisions, cell phones, most of these appliances use alternating current. That is why you will need a device to convert that DC current into an alternating current. In depth, we will discuss this in the fall. And there are the alternating current are two-way charge. Utility power, which is the LEC, also provides LEC in Liberia, the NAPA in Nigeria, the grid, the national grid in America. Different part of the world, they're called utility current, utility provider at given needs. So they provide your home with alternating current. When you buy a generator, your generator provide you an alternating current. The wind turbine provide you an alternating current. The wind and hydro turbines provide you alternating current. Okay? Let me move. There are two different types of array. We're just talking about that. Now in this chart right here, the components and system configuration, DC, AC. I'm going to go to my chart. I like this one. This one here. Stop sharing that screen. I'm going to share my other screen. Okay. So you can see the screen. DC load versus AC load. Any equipment that uses electricity to function. You have a graph like the light bulbs. They are now coming up with DC loads. So if you have an RV is like a mobile car, a mobile home. All the appliances in an RV use DC loads. So even the small refrigerator in there is DC. The television in there is DC. They uses DC load. There's no alternative except maybe you add an AC load to your RV or your home, your mobile home. They use DC loads. DC appliances are a little bit expensive and they're difficult to repair because the technology is not very friendly. There are not a lot of people that understand DC yet in terms of devices. But AC devices have been around and they are more cheaper and have been available for a long period of time, for a very long period of time. We have had AC loads around the world for a very long period of time. So AC load have been around for a long time. Now, DC load also could be like a pump. So there are pumps that pump water on the farm. People that have farms and um, when the fan that need to blow, whatever they may use it for, but you have some components that use DC load. So here is a model, it's a refrigerator model that's showing 12 or 24 volt DC only. So this is actually a DC model. This label here shows the model 12 volt and 24 volt, but only DC, so it does not take AC. That's what they're showing right there. So there are other DC component, DC equipments. Now, when we talk about AC load, look at the AC load. So we have DC load, which is now a lot. We have AC load, like in your homes. You have your refrigerator, like I said earlier. We have the light bulb, your LED light bulbs. Most of the LED light bulbs are AC load. AC uses AC, which is alternating current. What you cook with, you provide your toaster, AC load. So it is important to understand that in this car, this lesson, I want you to grasp the concept. If you don't learn anything but what you should learn here, there are two types of current. There are DC, there are AC. They're direct They're alternating. Solar panel or PV system only produces DC current. The DC current produced by the solar panel or the PV array is transformed by the use of a device called an inverter, or is inverted into AC. So you need a middleman, a mediator, to transform that DC current into an alternating current. Let's proceed. All right, electrical service panel and meter. Electrical service panel and meter. So I'm going to read a little bit. Any equipment that use electricity to function, from a light bulb to a water pump, a refrigerator is called an electrical load. I'm going to share this with you. It's called an electrical load. So these are terminologies you have to familiarize yourself with, because when in every field there are terminologies that are used, and you have to familiarize yourself with the terminologies that is within the domain or the arena of your occupation. That's what you see. Actors have that terminologies. And you are studying renewable energy, and we're talking about PV array, you have to understand some of these terminologies. So they say load. Any equipment that uses electricity to function, from a light bulb to a water pump, a refrigerator, is called an electrical load. Most loads are designed to run on either AC or DC electricity, but not both. You can have not both. You can have a device that uses DC current and AC current at the same time. Okay. For example, the compact fluorescent light bulbs form in a conventional hardware store will only run on AC power. However, there are also versions of compact fluorescents that will only operate on DC power, as they are specifically designed to run on DC power. Some types of light bulbs or water pump can run on both AC and DC power, but not at the same time. There are other devices that run on both. You can either use alternating or DC current, but not at the same time. So you have to run it on the DC, you run it on the DC current. You have to run it on the AC, you run it on an AC current. Grasp that concept. But they must be rated for the same voltage as the source. For example, even if a 12-volt light bulb is rated for both AC and DC use, it could not be used on a 120 watts socket, because the world is dominated by AC electricity distribution. Many DC appliances are considered to be specific, specific, specialty. Design are considered to be specialties items. Okay, let me go back to that. I was just saying previously that DC appliances are not very popular. They're not available to the consumer market. You cannot just walk in the store and say, I'm looking for a DC refrigerator, I'm looking for a DC television. It's not that, it's not there available. So it's AC that is highly available. So they call these DC appliances, they actually consider them as specialties items and can be difficult, in some cases impossible to find. DC appliances are often more expensive and hard to service than comparable AC appliances. Good places to look for DC device are solar product distributor or trucking, RV, and marine stores. So, like I was saying, people who have RV, which is like a mobile car, it's like a mobile home. Most of the appliances, almost all the appliances that is installed in an RV uses DC current, because the RV has battery. While you drive, your motor charges, the battery is charged. So when you park, your battery now is going to provide you electricity. And that electricity is DC direct. Because with direct DC, you use low voltage. You don't need a lot to pick up or run a device. That's why they say here it could not be used on a 12-volt wax and then 12-volt wax socket. So if you have a 12-volt light bulb, if it's rated for both AC and DC use, you can run it on a 120-volt wax socket. Destroy the component. All right, it might destroy your device. All right, it might destroy your device. So let me go back to my chat. I can show you. I'm gonna go between the slides. Do a little bit of reading and then do a little bit of explanation. Okay. Electrical service panel and meter. An electrical service panel allows for distribution of power through branch sockets protected by circuit breaker. In your home, there is an electrical service panel. In Africa or in Liberia, I'm from Liberia, it's called the breaker. But in developed countries, you have actually an electrical service panel in your home. What that does is that it distributes electricity into your various sockets. The socket in the bathroom, the socket in the living room, the socket in the rooms, it distributed through the lines, through running lines, through running wires. So you have electrical sockets. Very important to know. An electrical meter counts the amount of electricity in kWh, that is kilowatts hour. So your devices use kilowatts hour. So when you're buying a device, one of the most important things to check on is to see a small little sticker. Most of the TV now has a small little sticker that tell you that this device here for the whole year will use this kilowatts hour. It's very important to look for that little small sticker. Sometimes it's a yellow little sticker on the TV. Very important. That way you will know how much you're going to spend or how much current you need to provide to run that device for a whole year. Very important to understand. The graphic symbols and you have electrical symbol which stand for M. That M in the box, ironic, that's a symbol for electrical there is a symbol. Those are more like for electricians. So our electricians should familiarize themselves with the various symbols. You can familiarize yourself too as a trainee. So when you see these symbols, you know where they stand for. They're like initials. My initials is BKS. Anywhere BKS is written, it stands for my full name, Benedict Farty. So my the symbol to my name is BKS. That's what electrical symbols are. If I will break it down in the layman terms. Electrical service panel. So we look here to show a picture. We look on the right. There is a picture of a meter and electrical service panel. So the meter, the current comes from your grid, which is your utility grid, or your NAPA or LEC in Liberia. The meter is there to calculate how much kilowatts hour you use in your home. That is why when you have devices in your home running all day, they are burning a lot of electricity. That's why you have a meter. The meter there calculates the kilowatts hour. That's how they convert that kilowatts hour in order to know how much money or how does it bills. So you have meters. If you have a meter, go down and check the meter and see the meter. It tells you the readings. The readings are there. Very important to know. Now, if you look here, they say the branch socket breakers, the electrical meter, the service entrance conductor, and the main circuit breaker. These are very important in your handout, which is going to be printed to the material, your reading material, your personal use. Those as well. Now, let's dive into the most important part, one of the most important part of our training. Photovoltaic. Photovoltaic. So When you hear the word PV, solar panel is not called solar panel. It's called photovoltaic. Model generate DC electricity from the sun. So that is a graph of a symbol of a photovoltaic. So that PV, we say the solar panel, solar panel. In the technical word, in the renewable energy word, it's called PV, which is photovoltaic model. You have an electrical symbol like an envelope. So if you have a drawing, the reason why it's important to know these symbols, I also design, I went to school for architectural designs. If I was drawing a plan, I'm not going to go and put a graphic picture of the PV. I'm going to put a symbol. So anyone who understands that that symbol represents like that envelope looking symbol represents a PV model will definitely know that, oh yes, this plan have just shown that this building or this electrical plan have just shown that there is going to be installation of DC appliances, DC appliances. I mean, DC, there's going to be a provision of electricity through the means of DC, which is the PV array, the PV array, the solar panel. You'll be able to understand that. So also understand these symbols. They're very important. Very, very important now, field. Very important. Now, PV direct symbol, PV array. So the sun send the ray down to the PV, which is the photovoltaic, and then that photovoltaic sends a DC current. So there are DC appliances like I spoke about earlier. There could be a fan, maybe a fan that is used to blow the wind, a fan, in the farm or somewhere we have a fan. That fan could blow directly with a DC current, which means as long as the sun is shining, that fan works. It blows as long as the sun shines, it blows directly. Or we can also have a battery bank, which sends directly a DC current as well. So generations, consumption. See that? Generation, consumption. PV array generates the electricity. The fan consumes electricity. That's what I'm saying. Now, we're going to go to battery and charge controller. So this comes to storing your electricity now. The first thing you're going to need once you want to store electricity for hours or days where you're not going to have access or there will not be no sun ray, you need storage capacity, a means of storing your electricity. And what is used to store electricity is the battery. Later on, we talk about the different types of battery available on the market and the lead acid battery, the lithium. We'll talk about those batteries later. But you need a battery bank to store electricity. And that battery bank provides electricity for your devices. Be able to electrify your appliances in the absence of the sun array. So when the sun goes down, the battery then begin to provide you electricity. We have a graphic symbols. We have the electrical symbols. So if you see a plan and you see that symbols, like that white little symbol with plus and minus, and you see a little line, you know that represents a battery. So the battery stores DC electricity energy. Battery does not store AC, store DC. Then we have the charge controller. So your charge controller, that's the graph of the charge controller. The charge controller regulates the charge, the intake of charge into the battery and the outtake of charge from the battery. So your charge controller regulates. The charge controller regulates when the battery reaches the setting we're in, the discharge setting, the battery or the charge controller stop electricity, stop current from leaving the battery. If it was set to 80%, once it hits 80%, stop it. That is one of the reasons why we're having great problem in Liberia. I see a lot of people complaining the battery in Liberia don't last. The battery in Liberia don't last. You need to have a charge controller to regulate the discharge. In that way, the battery will still has at least 20%. In America, it's recommended 50%. There are other, depends on the battery. There's some battery you can go as far as 80% discharge. We'll talk about that later in more and in further training. We'll go into that later in further training. All right, let's move on to standalone PV system DC load only. So this here is a full system. The sun shine on the PV array. You have your charge controller, takes that current or that array from the PV and discharge it into the battery. And the battery provides you DC current. So this is a system. So once your battery is charged, the charge controller will send current straight into the house, straight onto your DC appliances. So once your battery reaches full charge, current go directly into whatever your appliances is for the day. Once the sun goes down or there is no sun ray, that current that is stored in the battery now begin to supply your DC current to your DC light bulb. If you have a standalone PV system DC, that's a DC system only. You can do that. This is a system I'm going to design for villages in Liberia, God's willing is on my mind. I want to provide this for villages. We're going to have DC light bulbs and direct. So 1 or 2 battery. So we have a study place for the young children, like a flower hall they can go on and there. I'm actually designing that project as well. I gave it to him. All right, it's very important to understand that. All right, maybe we need to do small reading. Let me go read a little bit. Some people learn by listening. So I'm going to read a little bit. And then go to small reading. Okay. All right, I'm going to go down just that, that, that. This is the most basic PV system configurations. The PV direct system. In these systems, the PV array, electrical generations, is wired directly to the load. Electrical consumptions, that is power which must be a DC load. This means that the load will only run when the sun is shining, because this is the only time that the PV array will be producing energy that the load needs to operate. So if you have a farm, you don't need, you have a farm, you want water, you set up your system to sprinkle water on your crops. In a day, you need to water your crops in the day, not in the night. So once the sun is shining, you set the time. When the time right for the water to be distributed, the water kicks on, you distribute water to your crops. System that has been designed. 2 very common examples of PV direct systems are solar attic fan, solar water pumping projects that use centers or storage tanks. The attic fan only need to run during sunny times of the day. Water can be pumped and stored during time for later use. If you have a water pump, you have a tank. What the water pump does is when the sun is shining, the pump starts, the water pump into your tank. The tank supply your house all day. When there's no water, there's no current, there's no sun, you still have water provided, have water into your home. Because of the simplicity of PV direct system, they can be more efficient and costless than the system of the following slide. Of course, the applications are limited. Yes, because it's DC. Then we have components and systems. Our topic today, we're talking about the component system configuration. Let me just go back to that. The batteries charge the batteries and charge controller. So I just provided the symbols. We went over this earlier in the previous slide. PV direct systems are very effective for certain situations. But in many cases, energy is needed when the sun is not shining. In order to accomplish this, a method is needed to store PV energy so that it can be used during nighttime or cloudy periods. Usually, this energy storage occurs in batteries. Batteries store energy from a PV array so it can be used later, regardless of the time of day. For example, lighting loads are primarily used during time when the PV array is not producing power. You don't need light to be on in the day. That's why build your home with enough windows, or make sure that you have enough natural lights coming in your home. People building homes and forgetting the fact that you live in Africa. You must build your home with enough ways that, in fact, even when you put it down your home, you should find a way to understand to some. Find a way where your home can have enough light in the day so that you can have natural lights in the day. You don't need to put on light bulbs in your house in the day. You don't need it. That's what they're saying, all offices and whatever. So most of the time you need light bulbs. So battery requires special care. Let me go back. Usually this energy storage occurs in battery. Battery store energy from the PV array so it can be used later, regardless of the time of day. For example, lighting loads are primarily used during time when a PV array is not producing power, namely when it is dark outside. Batteries store DC energy, the same type produced by PV modules. Battery can also provide surge of current that are needed to start certain load, like motor load. So you can have batteries with the same. So yes, the battery can run your refrigerator if you set the right watts and the right battery bank. Your battery can run your refrigerator. Your battery can run your television. Your battery can run your fan. Your battery can run your AC. Your battery can run every appliances if the load is calculated right and the battery bank is built to handle your load. Let's proceed. Battery requires special cares and maintenance. Have a look. Functional lifestyles. They are typically the most expensive and most expensive, most likely to fail component in the system. They also need to be protected from both overcharging and over discharging. Charge controller regulates how much PV power is sent into the battery in order to ensure that the battery do not overcharge. A charge controller can be cut off as a switch that will open the socket between the PV module and the battery when the battery is fully charged. Without charge controller regulating the flow of power. If the sun is shining, the PV module will continue to send power into the battery after they are fully charged, thus overcharging the battery. Charge controller can vary also vary their charging authority in stages to help increase battery capacity and lifespan. So you need charge controller. I hear people say, "Oh, you must understand that PV system is not the cheapest, but it's the most efficient and long lasting." Let me say, for example, spend $5,000 on a PV system for your home. You spend $2,000 to buy a generator for that same home. You buy fuel every day. To run that generator 24 hours, you spend a lot of money. Calculate that by a year. You can have a PV system if it's used efficiently and it is maintained right. That PV system can go for 25 plus years. So the upfront charge is small, but the longevity and the saving in the long run is to your advantage. That is the difference between a PV system and an AC current system. Like maybe you're paying for grid. You pay for grid, you have to pay every month. If you have a PV system set up, once the sun's shining, you got free current. Let's move forward. Component and system configuration. I'll talk about this later. Okay. So let me read this. Now the battery for energy storage and charge controller for regulation. From the previous slide, along with the PV array and load are used to create standalone PV system. The Gaussian diagram here only runs DC load, minimizing the number of components. This right here just showing a DC load, not There's no need for anything to invert the current into an alternating current. When the sun is shining, the array produces DC electricity. This power passes through the charge controller and is either stored in the battery or may go directly to the load. The charge controller only let through enough energy to bring the battery to a full state of charge and to operate any DC load. When the battery are full, the charge controller disconnects the PV array from the battery bank. When the sun is not shining, the battery bank provides energy to operate the DC load. I just explained that to you for those of you who are listening in the tank. I want to go to something more. Let me talk about it further. Some examples of common standalone DC systems are landscape lighting, bathroom refrigerator if you have a little small in the village, a little town or village health center. You can have such a system to what? You have a DC refrigerator there to keep the drugs and thing in. It's very important. All of these need to be taken into consideration. Component and system configurations. Inverter. Convert direct current DC to alternating current AC. I'm going to move right now into my slide because I want to show you that right there. Now, all right, let's go to my slide. Right. Their inverter. Their inverter. All right. Inverter. Inverter play a very, very major role when it comes to PV system. Very important role. Because the most available appliances are AC appliances, you need an inverter to invert that current into an AC current. Very important. You need an inverter to invert that current, to change that current into an AC current. Inverters are very, very important. Very, very important. Guys, give me a second. I'll be right with you. You're looking at a slide. Let me be right there with you. Okay. All right, guys, sorry for that. I'm back. Okay. All right. So we have standalone PV systems. Oh, sorry. So your inverter convert direct current DC to alternating current AC. Inverter play a very vital role, a very important role when it comes to building a PV system or using a solar system. I mean, yes, a PV system. It's very, very, very important role. Inverter play a very important role. Inverter invert the current. It alternate that current. It convert that current. I use the word, the right terminology, the right terms. Convert. It convert the current, DC current, into alternating current because most of the appliances used in homes around the world are AC appliances. So if you don't, you will need an inverter to invert to convert that into that to convert that for you. Very important. And there are different types of inverter. We have the string inverter, the central inverter, the macro inverter. String inverter is used on the residential level. Central inverter is used on the commercial level. Like if you have a solar farm and you're providing current to hundreds or thousands of homes, you need a central inverter. Macro inverter is another inverter that you actually install on the on your PV array. While you are mounting your array, you attach your microinverter to individual array, or you can have a series of inverters, microinverters. So what it does is that right from on your roof or from your mounting station, whether it being a standard, whether it being a roof mounting system or a ground mounting system, if you have microinverters or microinverter attached to your PV array, what it does is that it sends alternating current directly into your home, directly to your whatever distribution, your socket box, directly there send current directly, AC current into your home. Microinverter is another technology as well. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. So we have the standalone system. I just show you a standalone system. So this is a standalone PV system. You have the sun, the sun shines on the PV array. PV array sends the DC electricity to your charge controller. Your charge controller divides the current, sends some to your battery and sends some to your inverter, into your inverter. And your inverter change that current from DC to AC, which goes to your service panel, your service box, send current to your individual sockets in your home. It's a very beautiful system. Sun shines on the PV array. The PV array sends electron into your charge controller. These are all DC. We are staying into the DC. The DC goes into two forms. You have your battery bank, charges your battery bank at the same time, send a current into your inverter. They are still DC. When it goes into the inverter, it invert or convert. Let's use the right terminology. Convert that DC load into AC load. It becomes your alternating load. Very important, very important. Let's move forward. Very important. That's what they're showing here. That's what they're showing right here in this slide. Now we have a standalone PV system, DC AC load with backup generator. Now this is a very common system a lot of people using or may want to use in underdeveloped countries like Nigeria and other places. Why would you need a backup generator? Now, when there is no sun and your battery have been discharged, what you do, you have a little standby generator that will provide AC current to your home and then also charge your battery. Well, you need something called the inverter charger. And there's inverter and there is inverter charger. And inverter chargers, what it does is that it works in two ways. It sends AC current into your AC service panel, and it sends DC current to your battery DC loads. So it sends current to your battery DC load panel. That DC load panel will. So that's when you have your battery charging. So you can have a standby generator, but that system is a standalone PV system, DC AC load with backup generator. We will go in detail as we talk about these individually in later chapters. We have the grid direct. What is a grid direct? Grid direct means you have a PV system mounted on your roof or whatever way mounting system you choose. You have inverter. The PV send the DC current directly into your inverter. Here, there is no charge controller, there is no battery. Send the current, send the PV array generates the DC current, goes into your inverter. Your inverter send the AC current to your AC service panel, UI. Now, then you have the utility grid that send AC current to your meter. The meter also sends AC into your service box. What this means is that when the sun is shining, you will be having a lot of current provided by your PV array. At that time, you will not need the utility current. You will not need the utility current. And this system here is used in developed country. In America, it's in one of the most familiar systems. So this now will also sell excess current to the grid. So if your utility bill used to be $100 or $200 a month, your excess current will be sent to the grid. So the grid now will now look into the fact that, oh, you have current that you're giving back to us. So instead of your bill being $100, we charge you $200. We charge you your bill is now only $100 because your kilowatts hour have been used. Talk about that individually as we move forward. All right, and we have time for questions and answers. I want to this is very important. Now let me do some reading because some people learn by reading. I'm going to do some more reading. I'm going to do some more reading. Okay, guys, I'm going to do some reading. Some people learn by listening to uh, I am Alexis. I'm not very good. I have speech intelligence. So I'm not very good at reading a lot, but I love the fact that this material is familiar. Now let's talk about this. The next component to add to a PV system is the inverter. Inverter change the DC electricity from a PV array or battery into a DC array electricity that can be used by conventional DC load. Inverters are designed for a variety of special applications and must be carefully selected to match the intended use, to match the intended use and other system components and parameters. Depending on the system type of inverter, it may be capable of interconnecting with the utility grid. That is what I just explained. You can have a string inverter, you can have a central inverter, and you can have a macro inverter. Often inverter for battery-based systems are inverter or inverter charging. So you can have inverter or inverter charging. So the string inverter, or you can have an inverter that just converts your DC current to AC current, or you can have inverter charger that takes DC current from your grid or your generator and charge your battery as well when there is no sun. Meaning that they do not only invert energy from DC to AC, but they can also convert DC to AC to DC. Though the inverter can only operate in one of these modes at a time. This is useful for charging battery from an AC energy source, like a generator or the utility grid. In fact, many battery-based inverters can function as backup power systems without a PC array. The batteries are strictly charged by the grid, the generator, or both. So like I just explained, the same thing I explained to you. You have a system, you can have a system wherein you have a standalone system, you don't have no source coming from outside. You don't have a generator, you don't have an inverter, a utility grid. Or you can have a standalone system that has a backup generator that when there is no sun, it also send current into the inverter charger that will also provide you AC current and DC current to charge your battery. So once your battery is charged, you can have a needless assistance set that once the battery is fully charged, the generator goes off, your house now starts supplying, getting current. The DC current in the battery now goes directly into your inverter, and your inverter now gives you AC current. Hope you understand. We're gonna have question and answer. But right now, I'm just so juicy. All right. Often inverter for battery-based system are inverter charger, meaning that they 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 not only invert. I will just read this and then move forward. All right, this is what it's talking about right here. When I just went through that when I was showing you the diagram. Right. Just talking about that. So we have this one. In this slide, let me show you the slide. Standalone DC PV system, standalone PV system, DC AC load. In this slide, the system shows that both AC and DC load can be powered by standalone system. Energy flow in the same as in the previous. From the PV model through the charge controller and then into the battery. The battery can then power the DC load through the charge controller or the AC load through an inverter, through the inverter. A common example of this type of configuration is a small cabin which has a DC refrigerator, a DC water pump, and conventional AC lighting fixtures and receptacles to plug in and power load like stereos or computers. RVs and boats are other common standalone application where the battery provides DC load and the inverter the DC load to the load that provide DC to load and the inverter with the option of plugging in to show power. Okay, so when you have your RV, you, as I said, you use more DC appliances. These systems do not have weakness. The PV array is the only charge source. If over a period of time more energy is used that is generated and put back into the battery, eventually the battery voltage will fall to a point where the low voltage disconnect, LVDS, like I said. You have to have a low voltage disconnect on your battery system set. So when the battery hits that 80%, pop, the LVDS shut the discharge of your battery. Your battery will no longer provide a current to your inverter or provide current to your DC appliances. Now you have to charge that battery. So that's one of the problems we are facing in Africa and Liberia. People are using the battery at 100%. So the battery dies so fast. The battery should be able to go for years, at least 8 years of minimum. People are using the battery to 100%, running it out. Then we come and say we have problem. I said to a lady, it is easy to just say I'm an electrician, but to understand renewable energy or PV system, you have to be trained because it is new and the technology and the technicality in the configuration and installation of PV array is different from just getting current from a utility grid and running wire in the house. It's completely different. All right? Let's move forward, man. So right here, that's what I just spoke about. I spoke about having a system where you have DC load coming in to help when there is no sun. You have your generator to help provide you AC current, which goes into your inverter charger and send AC into your home and also send the AC DC load, DC charge for your battery. Now a backup generator is added to the standalone system from the previous slide. Backup energy sources are frequently installed with standalone systems for times when there is not enough sunshine to operate all of the loads and keep the battery charged with just the PV array. It is very common to use some sort of fossil fuels generator, but a backup generator could also run on biofuels, on biodiesels, winds or macro hydro turbine. So you can also have winds or macro hydro turbine. We will talk about these in further detail. Turbine are also popular backup load options, but require additional component different configurations in a site that has access to wind or flowing water resources. This is one of the systems I'm planning on designing in the rubber sports area when that is a system in Liberia. We're going to have our PV array system, and we tend to have the places is blessed with water from all sorts, water from the ocean, water from the lake. We in the future, God willing, we're going to also have a wind turbine system. So when they're in the rainy season, we can have current to charge our battery banks. In this standalone PV system configuration, all that has been added is an additional AC energy source that connects to the inverter charger. The inverter charger can pass the AC energy from the generator through to the AC load. And it can also convert the DC into DC to charge the battery and operates DC loads. Backup energy sources minimize the chance that the user's backup energy source minimize the chance that the user will run out of electricity. Even during extreme weather conditions and maximize weather condition and minimize the chance of low voltage disconnect, LVDS, shutting off load. Most batteries need to be brought to a full state of charge frequently in order to maintain longevity. So a generator can be a key component in the standalone system in order to protect the battery bank from premature failure. Depending on the system design, the use of the backup energy source may be infrequent backup and critical if power outage are undesired. So if you have a lot of sun coming in, a lot of sun, you may not really use your backup generator or your other source of energy because you have a lot. In Liberia, let's say all during the dry season, you may not need, you will not use that. You will use that in the rainy seasons more. That's when you're going to need that backup. All right. So we have a grid direct system. Grid direct system. So I'm going to go to my slide now. I'm going to go to my slide. Let me see how far am I in this training. I'm going to go to my slide. Right? All right, you have a grid direct system here. I just spoke about a grid direct system previously. A grid direct system does not have any backup source. You use the LEC light to also charge your LEC light to provide you current, and you use the sun. So let's say in the day, like Liberia, every time there's no light, the light gone. So all through the day, your PV system will provide you electricity, and in the night, your LEC will provide you electricity. That's what they're saying here. We have no storage. So if the LEC light is not in the house or NAPA does not have current coming in, and the sun is not shining, you are in total darkness. So that's why it is important. So this is a grid direct system. You can also have a generator to replace the source of grid or NAPA or LEC to supply you current when there is no sunshine. Very important, very important. Very, very important. Very important. Let's proceed further. All right. Then we have grid direct system, no grid, no power. As I said, no grid, no power. When there is no grid, you have no power. So I just explained that to you previously. So you have something called the PV power plant. Like I said, the PV power plant, it means that you have a solar farm or you have a lot of PV, a lot of solar panels. When you're driving along the highway in America, you see these fields with plenty of solar panels called a PV power plant. This is a PV power plant used what they call a central inverter. So the PV power plant has large array that sends DC current into the central inverter. That central inverter sends that DC current into your meter system. That meter sends it into the transformer, and the transformer now sends it to the utility lines, the utility voltage utility lines, and that utility line now goes to people's individual homes as an AC power source. Very important, very, very important. Let me sum this up. I'm going to go to the last one right here. And this is called the multi-move system. Multi-move is a very beautiful system. In the multi-move system, you have the PV array, charge controller. The PV array has a charge controller, your battery bank. You have your multi-move inverter charger. And then you also have a backup AC panel. You have two different panels. You have the utility grill as well. You have the same AC part, the PV array as well, providing you electricity. But when one is sending current, the other one shut off. When current is coming from your DC source, your AC source, your utility grid source shut off. When current is coming from your utility grid source, your DC load shut off. So that's multi-mode system. Very important to know. All right. So for summary, what are the basic type of PV system configuration? We talk about standalone. We talk about grid direct. We talk about standalone system. What components are found in the standalone system PV system and in the grid direct PV system? We spoke about a standalone system where you have inverter and you have battery banks. So one of the difference between a grid direct system is that a standalone system has a source of storage where you store current or you store power to be used later. So you have a battery bank. When you add a battery bank to a PV system, it becomes a standalone system. With the absence of a storage capacity, you have a grid providing you current and your PV array providing you current. That is a grid direct. Whether be it using the generator, you are using the grid, that's a grid direct. The grill is utility grill, is LEC in Liberia, Napa in Nigeria, that's a grid system. Give an example of the PV direct system. We spoke about PV direct system that you use a water pump. If you have a farm, you use a water pump. That's a PV direct system. You don't need to have a battery because it works in the day. So that's PV direct. Will a home with a grid direct PV system have power during a grid outage? No, a grid direct system only don't have a source of storage. So yes, when there's no power on, you will have no current. Your home going to be in darkness. At this moment, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to you guys for coming out to this course and taking advantage of this first series of our training. You stay tuned. We're going to have a next series of our training later. Okay. Thank you for coming up here. Once again, my name is Ben Sarti. We're going to have the next series of our training coming up. Okay.